Episode 172, Three Things Teenage Boys Need to Know Before Leaving Home with Alicia Davis.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a highly trained, experienced life coach making a great impact in the lives of their clients. And together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with a coach? Here we go.
While being a parent to any child brings its own unique challenges and struggles, parenting styles often vary based on the gender of a child. Boys need to be parented differently than girls. Coach Alicia Davis is a mom to 4 boys of her own and loves helping moms of boys learn how to better parent their sons. In today's episode, Alicia is talking about 3 important areas she feels moms need to make sure their teen boys know before they send them out into the world. All moms want to make sure their kids are ready for real life, and this is a great episode to help you make sure you have taught some important life skills to your boys. If you feel overwhelmed or need help in parenting your boys, make sure to reach out to Alicia. She knows what you are going through and is a great resource. Enjoy today's episode.
Well, welcome again to the podcast, everybody. We're glad you're joining us. And if you're new, we're glad you found us. If you are a veteran to this space, we're glad you're still here. I am joined today by a coach who's been on with me before, so you may recognize her if you have been with us for a while, but Coach Alicia Davis is with me. Hey, Alicia.
Hello, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So happy to have you. So this, it's April when you guys are listening to this podcast episode. And so I think you're going to find our topic today very timely because moms, I think, start to panic as we think, oh, our kids are growing up. Some kids are graduating. Some kids are leaving on missions. I think this is going to be a topic that you're all going to appreciate. But before we dive into that topic, Alicia, could you please introduce yourself or reintroduce yourself to people who are here with us today?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Alicia Davis. I currently live in Houston. I've been here about 15 years, but I was born and raised in Utah. So a little piece of my heart is in the mountains still. I have 4 boys. Their age ranges from 12 to 20. My oldest is actually coming home from his mission in June. I'm so excited. Can't wait.
He's like right around the corner.
It is. It's going to be great. And my second actually will head out not long after my oldest gets back. So we're kind of in the thick of all of the teenage, young adult kind of stuff right now. And it's great. So I have a degree in dance and I taught for about 10 years and then discovered life coaching and absolutely fell in love and was like, I have to do this. This is amazing. So I've been coaching for about 3 years. I did some contract work for the life coach school and I have my own practice and I could not be happier. This is the best job ever.
I did not know you had a degree in dance. That's so fun. What a fun area. And especially like with your boys, you get to have a little piece of like feminine energy someplace.
Exactly. In fact, I haven't taught in a few years and I had to go and find myself an adult tap class. I was like, I need some me time. I need some of that. So my boys don't dance, totally fine with that, but I still need that little smidge of art.
Yes, you do. Oh, I love it. I love it. All right. So mom, 4 boys, you have kids that have left home, obviously, one on a mission, one getting ready to leave. What, in your experience, do you think are the 3 big life skills that our teens need to learn before they leave? I'm just going to dive right into these questions that I have for you today.
Okay, let's do this because the 3 that I actually came up with, I discovered them when I was sitting down thinking, oh my gosh, my second is leaving. What do I want to tell him? Like, what do I really want him to know before he leaves? What does he need? Not just what he needs to know, but what do I want him to be able to do as he goes on his mission and goes to college? And as I thought about this, the 3 that came up are going to sound common, but I don't think we relate to them as skills. So let me just lay out the 3 and then we'll kind of go back and talk about them. So the first one is the skill of being able to compliment yourself. The second one is the skill of being able to stop shoulding on yourself. And the third one is the skill of practicing feeling better. So I know you're gonna have questions about all three of those. So where do you want to start? You're gonna just jump into the first one?
Yeah. And I just have to say, I love those because I'm not sure that I've ever heard anybody like lay those three things out there as being the important things we should teach our kids. But there's so many things that are encompassed in those three things as well. But I think they're also very neglected as far as the
Absolutely.
importance of them. Yeah, let's talk about the learning to compliment yourself because I think that's a really interesting one that people are going to be like, "What? What? Why that?"
Why that one, right? And is that actually a skill or is that just something we should all be doing?
Oh, it's
And
a skill for sure because it's totally
it's
learned. It
totally
doesn't come easy.
no. And what's interesting is we're really good at complimenting other people. We have no problem complimenting other people. And it's a lost art to be able to compliment ourselves.
Yeah.
So I actually gave a presentation to a group of youth, 16 to 18 years old. There were about 200 of them that went through in a few different cycles. So I asked them, I said, okay, I want you to give yourself a genuine compliment, but I gave them a caveat. I said, you can't talk about anything you're wearing.
Well, because I was going to say that I think we're really good at complimenting each other on kind of superficial things. We're not that great at complimenting each other on important things, I
Yeah,
think.
right. And it
So
was
I
so
like that you
interesting.
said that.
Well, and what happened? It was so funny because I said, okay, give yourself a genuine compliment. And then when I said, but it can't be about what you wear, their faces were like, oh, what? Like, I can't? Oh, dang. And it made them think, made them dig a little bit deeper. And what's intriguing about this skill is that our brains don't normally notice the things that are good about ourselves. Like if you were to ask a teenager, like give them, okay, let's say we put a bucket of blue M&Ms in front of them, and there's one red bucket in the M&M. What do you think their eye is going to notice first? Clearly the red M&M, right? Same thing if you're looking at a face of a friend and they have a chipped tooth, it's going to be really hard to focus on anything except the chipped tooth, right? Our
Mhm.
brains normally watch for and look for things that feel out of place or odd or quote unquote wrong. And that's just normally what our brains do. And there's no problem with it, right? There's a purpose behind it. But as teenagers, that just happens so automatically and so frequently that we don't tend to balance it by observing the good things too. You'll see this with selfies, right? If a teenager takes a selfie, 9 times out of 10, they will look at the picture and notice something that was wrong. My hair was out of place, or my leg was in a weird position, or there was somebody in the background, or my face, my neck was weird. Like they'll just notice the thing they don't like first, which is normal and natural. So the skill of being able to compliment yourself kind of just balances what your natural brain goes to initially. And it's a great kind of practice. And what I've told teenagers as I do this is, okay, all it takes is one. You only need to do one, right? You don't need to give yourself 10 compliments or find all of the good. Just one time a day, you just look at, not even look at yourself. I was going to say, look at yourself in the mirror. I was like, don't even do that, right? You don't even need to look at yourself. Just reflect and offer one. And okay, here's the caveat with this too. There's two caveats. Okay. Can't be about something you wear. And the second thing is you actually have to write it down. You can't put it in a phone. You can't like text it to yourself. It doesn't work like that. Pen and paper or a marker or a dry erase marker on a mirror. It has to be something that you actually write down, one a day. And as you accumulate these daily, we know that small and simple means bring great things, right? As you do this, just one small compliment at a time, your confidence just soars. It's so intriguing because I had these kids, there were a group about 50 to 60 in this group. And I gave them all a post-it and I said, one compliment, one genuine compliment that you actually believe about yourself. And I said, I want you to come put it on the chalkboard. And they did. So I had like 60 post-its on the back. And then I turned around and read them all. Maybe not all of them, but a lot of them. And I turned back around and I faced the kids, and you would not believe the smiles on their faces. It was like, oh my gosh, like there's good. This is really, it changes your attitude, your outlook, and your whole confidence level. So if I want to send anything with my kids as they're graduating, that's the first thing I want to go for.
Mhm. Everything changes when you have confidence in yourself.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. I love that. I'm sure most of you are listening to this via the podcast, but people also can view this on YouTube if they'd like to. I can see behind you a whole board full of Post-its.
Yeah, I saved them. I love some of them so
Yeah.
much. I was like, I'm taking them back.
Ooh,
So,
I love it.
and some of the things they came up with were they were deeper, right? When you ask them to think a little bit deeper about themselves, they come up with amazing things. So
I actually just read a news article, and I won't be able to quote where it was because I can't remember anything or what the details of it were, but it was the importance of writing things. Like there is like a hand brain, something that happens in your brain when you write it down physically versus typing it. We remember it better when we write it down, and we internalize it more. So I see the value in writing that down.
Yeah. Well, and as a mom looking at this, I'm like, okay, how can I help my kids develop this skill? And it depends on your kids, obviously. One kid might respond well to one method and one might respond well to a different method. So, I mean, try different things, but in an effort to try to help, like get curious and get creative about this, right? Like some of my kids really don't want anybody else reading their compliments to themselves. So I'm like, okay, put it in your journal, right? Some of my kids like posting it and seeing it visibly day after day. So I'm like, put the Post-its on the mirror or write on the mirror in your bathroom so you look at them every day. Some people like putting them in a jar and collecting them for a whole year and then going back and reading them later. So just as a mom, you know your kids, figure out which method works best and help them practice that.
Love it. Great ideas. Okay, the should, could. We've all heard this before. But let's hear your take on it.
Yeah. So it was interesting when I first talked about this second skill with the teenagers. I literally just said, hey, you guys have to stop shoulding on yourself. And they kind of like went, wait, did she just say that? I said, yes, shoulding on yourself. And they're like, what does that even mean? So I had them make a list of all of the things they felt like they were supposed to do or felt like they had to do. And it was long. It was quite long. We wrote it on a different chalkboard and it didn't stop, right? Like I had to actually stop the kids. I was like, okay, we got enough. We're good, right? Like I have to keep my room clean. I need to go to school. I need to go to seminary. I need to make sure I get good grades. Like it was never ending. And I said, okay, looking at this list, how do you feel about this? And the number one word that it was repeated with every group was overwhelmed. I was like, yep, I can totally see it. All these things we're supposed to do. I said, what happens if you actually don't do all of these things? How do you feel? Right? There was overwhelm, but there was guilt, there was shame, and a lot of negative emotion that doesn't necessarily need to be there. So I said, okay, should is kind of a made up construct. I said, go home and tell your parents what you learned here was that I don't have to do anything. And they were like, what? I said, no, just for a second. I said, what if you for a minute believed that you didn't have to do any of those things? Do you really have to clean your room? Do you really have to go to seminary? Do you have to? And this is where the moms are like, oh, don't tell my kids this, right?
Panic.
As a mom, yeah, there's panic. As a mom, you're like, what are you telling my kids? But here's the key. When you shift the should with all of its overwhelm and its guilt to could, it opens up the door for agency, right? If you tell a kid, and obviously this is different for different ages and for different kids. I don't think there's a blanket age or time when you're like, okay, now we're going to shift all of the expectations we have as moms over to options, right? This is a process, obviously. But when you introduce the option to the kids, it feels like they have a choice. And they start to imagine, okay, I could do this. Why would I even want to? What are the benefits of this? And they really do come up with some interesting things when you ask them to consider why they would want to do it instead of why they have to do it. Because the shoulds are super pushy, right? And you feel like you have to and you're compelled to do it. What do you do when someone tells you you have to? Our natural response is to start pulling back and pulling away.
Oh yeah, I'm a no-go. When someone says you need to do something, I'm like, forget it.
Right?
The idea. It's totally different.
We all do that. So if the shoulds keep continuing in our teenagers' minds, the resistance is going to start building. So giving at an appropriate developmental time and age, that we get to kind of experiment with expectations and invitations. And I feel like the church has done a fantastic job, even with the For Strength of Youth booklet that's come out, right? Like, these are the invitations. Here are the rules and the guidelines and the blessings that come from following this. And if you choose to follow it, these blessings will be yours. It's totally up to you, right? So again, this is different for every mom. So I know that panic sometimes sets in for moms when we talk about it this way, but this is where the coaching comes in for parents. I coach moms of boys. And this is the spot where we want our kids to grow, but it gets really uncomfortable thinking about giving them a little bit of autonomy because we know it's going to be hard and they might make choices that we don't like. And that's okay. That's actually part of them learning how to preside over themselves.
Mhm.
If our boys are going to be presiding over families one day, we got to give them the opportunity to preside over themselves. And this is a good way to begin teaching them how to do that.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking that once we tell people that they could do something versus they should do, it almost, and this will be scary for parents, but it almost is beneficial for them to initially, they might stop doing some things that you think they should be doing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I know from personal experience that sometimes when I eliminate the things that I felt like I should do, that is when they become something that I want to do because I begin to recognize, oh, this was beneficial to me. And
Yeah.
it shifts why I do it. And then it changes everything. So
Yes.
it might be a little scary, but yes, the coaching tools that the coaches here share with people makes that so much easier for people to just be able to, okay, sit back and let things develop and be patient. But we do want our kids to be able to practice their agency.
Yeah. It's a big one. And I think a lot of times, thinking about sending missionaries out, actually, this is where my brain is right now. A lot of times we're like, if we can just get them out, then they're, they'll kind of just go and things will work out and it'll be okay. And as I've talked with some teenagers, whether it's boys or girls, there's almost like this sense of duty, which I think is a very good thing about serving a mission. And it becomes kind of next level when you go, you don't have to go. Like, you've been asked to go. You don't have to go. Why do you want to? And it just kind of opens their mind like, oh, okay, well, what benefits do I think are there for serving a mission? And it helps them choose a little more intentionally, in addition to having that desire to be obedient and fulfill a duty. That's a beautiful thing. And then when we add on top of that, the idea that going and serving could be because we want the blessing of developing our testimonies. We want the blessing of serving other people. We want the blessing of increased growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's when it becomes next level.
Maybe this is a side note, but I guess I have seen missions two different ways. Like, I've seen some mission presidents where they really help missionaries develop that autonomy. And I've also seen some mission presidents who I think almost take that autonomy away because they're so rule driven. I've just seen this in some of my kids' friends as they've come home, the differences in the way the missions function. I'm wondering, as a parent, how can we prepare our kids who are leaving and going on missions to maintain that autonomy and the ability to preside over themselves if they are in a situation where they feel like that might not be the case for them, where their mission president is like, this is what we do, no questions asked, sort of thing. Do you have any thoughts on that, or am I totally side railing this conversation?
No,
I feel like it kind of applies.
Completely. And actually, I just had a conversation with my oldest son about this because he happens to have a wonderful mission president who is more rule oriented. And this is, these are the things, and make sure you're focusing on other people 100% of the time and not on yourself. And it gets tricky, right?
Yeah.
To be able to maintain autonomy and make choices for yourself when you're being asked and expected. I think some mission presidents do expect you to behave in certain ways. And what I would offer in this scenario to any missionary who's thinking about going or is currently out, you still have an option, right? There are expectations perhaps from a mission president. There are rules. There are definitely things that situationally, depending on your mission president or where you're at, yes, you're going to be asked to do those things. And you still have an option. again, it just goes back to the same thing. Like you could do those things. And if you did, what would it be like? How would you feel? What would be the result of that? And do you want that? Right. And just because someone is asking you to do it doesn't mean you need to. It doesn't mean somehow, like, I think there's this mentality that if I'm not perfect in doing it this way, according to mission president or according to this, then somehow I failed as a missionary.
Mhm.
And I
That
would just
someone
really
won't hear the
challenge that.
gospel, right? That somebody might not
Yeah.
hear the gospel because I didn't do exactly 100% what the mission
What I
president
should do.
do. Yes.
Right.
And I think that gets a little convoluted because
Oh
that's
yeah.
not,
Yeah.
it's not how it goes.
No. And that's not how the Savior accepts us, right?
Right.
He
Right.
doesn't just accept us if we're perfect missionaries. He accepts us where we're at. He's like, cool, I'll work with it. Whatever you're willing to give me, let's work with it.
Mhm.
So I think part of it is I'm okay where I'm at with this, right? And remembering everybody has a different approach to missionary work. What's mine and what feels good to me and how do I want to proceed with the
Mhm.
Lord?
Yeah, I like that. And even just the phrase, where you said, our Heavenly Father is saying, what are you willing to give me?
Mhm.
I think we even can be careful with that too, because sometimes with some missionaries, I've seen them be like, well, if I'm not willing to give this, maybe that means I'm not good enough or there's something wrong with me.
Mhm.
And we have to just be really careful
Yeah.
of those phrases, I think, all together.
Yeah.
I love that you're talking about personal autonomy and presiding over ourselves, because that is ultimately what our Heavenly Father and our Savior want us to learn how to do. And sometimes in doing that, that means we might do something different than what we're
Yeah.
being asked to do. But I believe in a Heavenly Father and a Savior who value me doing that work over me just always doing what I'm being told to do.
Yeah. 100% agree. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for letting me take us on a little
Absolutely.
tangent there, but I felt like it was an important one. Okay.
I love the tangent.
So, building tolerance for feeling emotions. Oh, this is a
Yes.
good one. And one that
Right?
I'm always like, did I do this? I'm just not sure.
Well, and I have to explain this third one a little bit because when we develop the skill of practicing feeling better, I'm not talking about shifting the negative emotions to a positive emotion. It's not
Right.
toxic positivity. That's not it, right? Feeling being a verb, meaning we're going to practice feeling all the emotions in a way that's beneficial for us, right?
Mhm.
So it was so great explaining this to teenagers because I put up a picture of a bunch of people in a cold plunge. They were all in their bathing suits with like winter hats on in this lake in the middle of winter, and they were cold plunging. And this one guy's face was just like you could tell it was either his first time or he didn't know what he was getting into really.
Well, and you guys are in Texas. I'm assuming
Yeah.
you were in Texas where
Yeah.
they don't experience cold.
Nope, nope. So I asked the kids, I was like, hey, how many of you have done a cold plunge? And like half of them raised their hand. And I was like, okay, first of all, where have you done this?
Yeah.
But as we talked more about it, we realized that most people, when they do this cold plunge, they have to build up their tolerance to the cold. Some people started with 30 seconds. Some people started with 10. Some people started with a minute. But as you continue doing it, obviously you can do it longer and longer. And what's interesting is when someone decides to do a cold plunge, no one does it because no one does it unless they think it might be good for them, right? Like most people
Because
are
they're
like,
not doing it because they think it's going to feel good.
no, it
Right.
feels
That's not,
horrible.
yeah.
It's cold, it's miserable, your body like tenses up and shakes, it literally goes into fight or flight response, right?
Yeah.
So in order to do it, you kind of have to have a good reason. So people are literally thinking, okay, this is good for me, this is also temporary, right? And there's going to be some kind of benefit afterwards, whether it's physical or psychological. So they go into it expecting to feel that fight or flight response and to do it anyway, and then to be done, right? So I put up a slide after this when I gave this to the kids. I was like, okay, how is your tolerance for cold? And they were like, that's pretty good, right? So then I changed the slide and I said, okay, how is your tolerance for these? And what was on the slide was all the emotions that are tricky: embarrassment, guilt, fear, worry, anxiety, like all the things. And the room got so quiet. So it was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't tolerate that very well. Even one kid that I know pretty well was like, yep, no, mine's really low. I was like, I know, guess what? Everybody's is. It's okay. So I said, first of all, we had a discussion about why negative emotions aren't bad. They're just part of our human experience, right? We have to have opposition in all things. That's just part of our journey here. And knowing that some of these negative emotions are just part of our human experience, I said, how long would you be willing to feel embarrassment? Like, could you stand it for 2 minutes? And they were like, yeah. And I said, okay, could you stand it like for half an hour? And they were like, I think so. And I said, okay, could you stand it if you didn't have your phone with you? And they were like, no. I was like, yeah, this is what happens. In our effort to build up our tolerance, we try to distract ourselves and get away from it and don't actually feel our emotions. We try to push them away. And for teenagers, it's so easy because the phone is just right there. It is for adults too, right? But it's especially available for our kids to just turn to their phones and to just not have to face those feelings. Mm-hmm. So the important part next is being able to realize that, okay, there's nothing wrong with feeling embarrassed for a little while. It's okay. And all those same things that apply in the cold plunge, like it's actually good for you to feel embarrassed for a little bit sometimes. And it's temporary. It's not going to be forever. It's okay, right? When you're cold plunging, you have to kind of breathe to slow your heart down and to tolerate the cold. And it's the same for emotions, right? If we take some deep breaths, that is the very first part of being able to accept and process and just feel the emotions. And when we can do that, even 2 or 3 deep breaths, it actually shifts pretty quickly. So there's obviously a lot more that we can help kids do to understand how to process their emotions, but that's just the very first one. That's the tip of the iceberg. So,
ooh, that's such a great visual because guaranteed why they've been scrolling, they have seen people cold plunging, right? Because it's just kind of a thing right now. So I think it's a great comparison and one that is kind of tangible almost because you can imagine that feeling of doing the cold plunge. So, oh, I love it. I think that's great.
Right.
I tried it once and that's it.
You're better than me. I tell my kids I'm cold-blooded anyway. I don't need a cold plunge to know that I'm just freezing all the time. So
I know.
Well, and something else that came up as I was thinking about this, boys process emotion a little differently than girls. And unfortunately, our society, our culture doesn't really allow boys to have feelings the same way that we allow girls to have feelings, right? Crying for boys is like the biggest no-no, right? Like if they cry, they're seen as weak or vulnerable. And so for boys, this might even be actually a little harder to be like, no, it's okay to have emotions. That might be a totally foreign concept for boys. So
for sure.
Yeah. And as a mom of boys, I'm constantly like, okay, if I want my boys to be able to understand their own emotions and be able to eventually live with a spouse who you also want to be there for them and their emotions too, and connect with them that way, like we got to start now. We got to start introducing the vocabulary of emotion work and just recognizing with them, like, hey, you know what? You seem a little peeved. But like, what's that about? Right. And even if they don't want to talk about it, even just labeling it for them when they may not have the words for it themselves, that is a wonderful place to start.
Yeah. If you haven't, and maybe we can link to this in the show notes, but like look at a feelings wheel and it kind of gives you those base emotions like happy, sad, mad, glad, and then all the emotions that span out from those.
Yep.
That giving them words for the feelings that they're experiencing is so helpful.
And you know what's so funny? Oftentimes our kids will look and observe things without us even talking about them and internalize them. Like I would take out conference quotes from the magazines and put them on my bathroom wall because I know my kids are going to be in the bathroom eventually. So I'm like, I'll just put them up there. Put the feel wheel on the bathroom wall.
Yeah.
Right? They're going to look at it. They're going to see it. Even just reading the words will help expand their vocabulary a little bit.
For sure. Ooh, I love it. Okay. This has been fantastic. Such great ideas and so easy to use and apply and initiate into our families. I don't think it's anything that is hard. It's just little things here and there that we can seed and drop into conversations. So
that's where it starts.
Fantastic. All right, Alicia, where can people find you?
Okay, best place is Instagram. Alicia Davis Coaching is where I'm at. Or you can go to the website with the same name. Or I have a podcast that's called 7 Minute Sunshine. It's for all of us busy moms who don't have a whole lot of time, but want to get short, little sweet segments of power in their day. So go check out that podcast as well.
Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody being here with us today. And we hope you'll join us again next time. We'll link to all those things in the show notes. Have a good one, everybody. Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.